Hi, everybody. We want to get started. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Tom Campbell, and I am the program manager for the Traumatic Brain Injury State Partnership Program in the Administration of Community Living in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you for joining us for today's TBI Tuesday session. This is the third of our 5 TBI Tuesday sessions this year. Today is about return to learn, equal access to education for students with brain injury. As I said, this is the third of 5. I hope if this is the first one you've joined, welcome. And if it's not, thanks for coming back. These sessions this year are in lieu of our ACL TBI Stakeholder Day, which is usually held in person. Couldn't do that this year. But the virtualness gives us a chance to do a couple things that we haven't done before. So we're excited that we've expanded these from a single day to 5 different days, 5 different afternoons during the month, and one in April. We're excited for the opportunity that the virtual sessions give us that allow more stakeholders, more of you to come and enjoy these sessions. Today, we've got over 317 people that have registered for today's session. And that is just really, really outstanding. And I'm looking at, there's over 100 people online right now, and that is perhaps only going to grow. The webinar is hosted by our Traumatic Brain Injury Technical Assistance and Resource Center that we call the TBI TARC. It's funded by the Administration for Community Living to support the grantees and to support the stakeholder community at large. All of these webinars are free and open to the public, and we hope if you like it, invite other people for the next 2 after this one, and I'll tell you where to get the recordings in a few minutes. One focus of the TBI Tuesday sessions is to highlight the work of our ACL-funded TBI State Partnership Grant Program grantee work groups. The TBI State Partnership Program builds infrastructure, services, and supports for individuals with TBI throughout their lifetime in their own states. There are currently 27 grantees, and they work in interstate work groups on a variety of topics. There's actually 9 different interstate work groups. Most grantees are on multiple ones. We have, and this year, 5 of these groups are supporting the TBI Tuesdays. Today's TBI Tuesday session is supported by the Return to Learn and Return to Play working group. We've also heard from Underserved Populations work group and the Sustainable Partnerships work group in the last 2 weeks. And in the future couple weeks, we're going to hear from the Criminal and Juvenile Justice work group, as well as the advisory boards and survivor engagement work group. Excited about those 2 sessions coming up, as well as today's. But before I tell you more, then we go to the next slide, slide 3. Before we go to more of today's session, let me give you some logistics that you're going to need to know. Participants will be in listen-only mode during the webinar. Please use the chat feature in Zoom. You can see it at the bottom of your screen if you move your cursor to post questions and communicate with the hosts. There will be a question and answer session period after every speaker today. So go ahead and, when you think of them, put your questions in the chat. They will be monitored, and people will address those questions as we can, as time allows. We are live captioning the webinar in English and also providing an American Sign Language and ASL interpreter. If you don't see the captioning, there should be a button on the bottom of your screen. Again, move your cursor to see that button. Click there. If you have any questions, any concerns, put a question into chat and somebody will help you. This live webinar is interactive. And so you will have an opportunity to respond to polls and other questions during the webinar. So that's to make sure you're paying attention, just so you know. Slide number 4, a little bit more. So after the webinar, You can send follow-up questions and feedback to this website, tbitarc@hsri.org. Please note that website, that email rather, is not being monitored during the webinar. If you need assistance during the webinar or have a question, just please use the chat feature. A recording of the webinar and also a PDF version of all the slides will be available on the ACL website. Materials for all of the TBI Tuesdays will be posted soon. The previous TBI Tuesdays aren't up yet, but they will be very soon, and then the others will be posted as we can get them there. So that brings us to our first poll of the day, which should be on the screen. There it is. There it is. So we want to know who's here. What roles, in what roles do you self-identify? And you can check as many of these as you like. Person with traumatic brain injury or other disability, a family member of a person with a disability or a TBI, self-advocate, peer specialist, peer mentor, social worker, counselor. Who are you? We want to know who you are, who's out there listening to us today. Researcher, service provider, service organization, or a government employee. We love government employees. I am a government employee, very close to my heart. In a few seconds, Connor will close the poll, but we'll give you a few seconds to respond. All right, and the responses are in. Looks like we've got 43% of you are government employees. We've got a good number of social workers, self-advocates. Love to see the advocacy community. Person with traumatic brain injury, always thank you for coming. Thank you for allowing us to share with you what we're doing. Service provider organization employees, so we got a good number of those as well. That's terrific. Thank you very much for that information. Terrific. So now I would like to welcome Julie Myers. Julie is one of our wonderful grantees from the state of Pennsylvania. She's the program administrator for the Pennsylvania Bureau of Family Health's Traumatic Brain Injury Programs. Julie will introduce herself in a little bit more detail and then start today's session and introduce the speakers for the Return to Learn, Return to Play work group. Julie, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Tom. Next slide, please. Hi, so once again, I'm Julie Myers with the Pennsylvania Department of Health. Pennsylvania is one of the mentor states on the Return to Learn, Return to Play work group. Today, we've got a lot to get through. I'm going to give you a brief overview of our work group. Then we're going to have a presentation on policy and best practices in Return to Learn, followed by academic supports for students after brain injury participating in online learning. Then we have an individual with lived experience who's going to talk about her son's experience in the Pennsylvania Brain Steps program. Next slide, please. After that, we will have a break, and following the break, we'll come back together for some discussion and question and answer with a brief focus discussion at the beginning of the session about the pros and cons of having Return to Learn legislation. Next slide. Just real briefly, here are our speakers for today. As we said earlier, we'll let everyone introduce themselves for the sake of time. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to talk briefly about the Return to Learn work group. Thanks. Next slide, please. Okay, first, just real quickly, I wanted to kind of establish some terms that you'll hear a lot in the return to play field, and just wanted to clarify those. So you'll hear return to play, return to learn, and return to school a lot. The easiest way to think about this is return to school covers all activities related to school reentry after a brain injury. Return to learn covers those activities specifically related to learning, and return to play covers those activities related to school athletics. I sometimes see return RTS as abbreviated for return to sports, but it is much more common for it to be used for return to school. Thanks. Okay, the states in our work group are Missouri, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Utah. The purpose of our work group is to provide mentorship in return to learn, return to play, and develop return to learn products. The big products that have come out of this work group include return to learn workforce competencies, all of the work groups on the ACL TBI grant, Administration of Community Living, Traumatic Brain Injury grant, were tasked with coming up with competencies for the traumatic brain injury workforce. So that was one of our major products. The other thing that we are still working on is a return to learn toolkit. And I just want to give you a few brief examples of the kind of materials you'll find in there, because there's going to be a ton of really good, useful products in that toolkit. Next slide, please. So here's just one example. Some of our return to learn recommended protocol that's come out of Pennsylvania's Brain Steps program. And there's a link to this in the slide. And the toolkit is not publicly available yet, but you'll have this link if you're interested in just this document. Next slide. This is another sample product. This is the Get Schooled on Concussion Points of Vulnerability worksheet, another fabulous resource. Next slide, please. And this is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention classroom tips for teachers. And this is just one of several products from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that you'll find in the toolkit. Next slide, please. So a conversation that we've been having in the Return to Learn work group has been around greater state-to-state collaboration, and how we're always talking about not reinventing the wheel. And education and training is such a major component of all of our brain injury state programming. So this is just a draft document. This has not been finalized, but this is kind of what we've come up with as an idea for helping states share webinars. So our thinking is, we're all producing this really great content, and it would be great if we could share it across states and, not have like all 50 states have to develop, for example, their own brain injury 101 education. So again, this is just in draft, but this is a sample of kind of how we're thinking about this webinar sharing. Next slide, please. And now I'm very pleased to introduce Karen.
All right. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you. I am Karen McAvoy, and I am pleased to be here today. I want to thank everyone involved with TBI Tuesdays for inviting me to be part of this process. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about myself. I'm both a clinical and school psychologist, an educator of 31 years at this point. And I'm the owner of REAP, which is stands for Remove, Reduce, Educate, Adjust, Accommodate, and Pace. And I'll show you a little bit more about that as I go through my talk. And also the co-owner of Get Schooled on Concussions. So I will be talking a little bit about policies of return to learn, and I'll use a couple of examples of these resources to show you how we can hit some of the marks on return to learn as we move forward with this fairly new field as part of or a subgroup of this field of brain injury. So I'll try to bring some of that in and give you guys some examples and let you guys take it from there. Next slide, please. All right, so I have been tasked as one of the presenters here to talk about best practices for return to learn. And when you look at the different products that are being created with return to learn, which is fairly new compared to return to play, which started probably a couple of decades ago because of the danger of having our young athletes sustain multiple hits to the head and removal from play. But over the last couple of decades, we have now come to realize that when you're talking about students, we can't just be talking about putting them back to sports. We have to be talking about putting them back to activities with their friends and getting them back to school and back to learning. So I was tasked with what are the best practices out there for return to learn. And when you start to look at the various products, I don't think it's possible that one size will fit all. So I've decided that I will introduce you more to the concepts of essential elements in return to learn. And I'm basing all of this on a new article that was published in September of 2020 with a number of my colleagues who are on this call today, Dr. Egan Johnson, Dr. McCart, and some others that are not here today. This is an article that tasked us to pull together a group of interdisciplinary professionals to come up with essential elements on return to learn and to reach consensus. So I'm going to walk you through that process and show you what we came up with. Next slide, please. So the national organizations that were involved with this are these that are listed here. This was a Research Delphi process where the National Collaboration on Children's Brain Injury, NCBI group, tasked us and my co-leader, Dr. Egan Johnson, to pull these groups together and see if we could come to consensus on a number of essential elements for return to learn. Rather than programs, we were looking at essential elements. And you can see that this group of organizations cover quite a large interdisciplinary swath. We have the National Association of School Nurses, the National Association of School Psychologists, American Academy of Pediatrics, Neurology, the Department of Defense, some great partners. NASHA is in here, National Association of State Head Injury Administrators. So we have some great partners that we pulled together and we're able to reach consensus with 2 rounds of the Delphi process on 13 different statements that we all could agree are essential elements of return to learn. So that's what I'm going to go through and break that down for you. Next slide, please. The 13 consensus statements that everyone was able to reach consensus on are these listed right here. And I realize that these are probably too small for you to read. And so I'm going to break these down into categories that we could actually begin to get our thoughts and our products to align with, and it will make a little bit more sense. So next slide. There are 3 statements that break down to cognitive rest, and I'm going to go into these in more detail in just a few minutes. Next slide. There are 3 statements that break down to the composition of a concussion management team. So keep in mind that with this return to learn paper, this is primarily focusing more on concussion, the mild TBI, more so than moderate to severe traumatic brain injury, but I'll pull in a little bit of that a little bit later as well. But the composition of the concussion management team is very specific to the acute mild TBI, or also known as concussion. Next slide. There are two essential elements that break down to progress monitoring, symptom monitoring and academic monitoring. And I'll show you some examples of those in just a minute. Next slide. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time on this ascending levels of academic support. These are the existing educational safeguards that are already in place in schools for students who struggle for any reason, whether it's medical or behavioral or psychological. There are already in place 3 tiers to support students from general education through customized tailored interventions all the way up to special education. So we're going to apply traumatic brain injury to these ascending levels of support, and I'll show you how we do that in just a minute. Next slide. And then there is one component about neuropsychological testing, and I'm not going to come back to this, so I'll talk about it here on this slide only. So the consensus statement that everyone could agree upon is that data from a neuropsychological evaluation in the context of brain injury is always helpful and should always be considered in any type of return to learn plan, but it's not required. It is not something you need to wait for to create a return to learn plan, or that you couldn't move forward if you didn't have this. And part of the reason for that is that the research shows that 70% of students with a concussion will likely resolve from their concussion within 28 days. So 28 days, a month's time, is generally not enough time or reason to require a full-blown neuropsychological evaluation, which oftentimes you can't get in to see a neuropsychologist within a month's time. And by the time you do, your concussion may have already resolved. So the other thing is that there are not many neuropsychologists that cover all of our rural areas. And so sometimes it's just not possible to get into that. And it's often not needed or required in a concussion scenario. However, for moderate to severe brain injury, a neuropsychological evaluation may be something that is needed and might be something that down the road. Next slide. And then the last consensus statement, the 13th one, has to do with return to learn legislation. And I won't go into detail on this because I know we're going to have some good discussion on that. All right, next slide. So let's drill down a little bit deeper into some of these. So the first 3 essential elements have to do with cognitive rest. But really, in my mind, that is kind of the same thing as return to school. If you look at these statements, we know that students who have a concussion will need a period of rest. That amount of rest in the beginning of a concussion is going to vary student by student. For some students, they need a day or 2. For some students, they may need days or weeks. So this is a very specific kind of recommendation for that student. It can't be something that is determined for all students. The research shows that 70% of students will get better in 28 days. That seems like a long time for students, a month, but for when you look at medical conditions, that actually is a very favorable outcome. And during that time, while yes, the student needs to be out of physical activity so that they can't hit their head again, we do need to gradually return them to social and academic activities such as school. So I'll go into that in just a little bit more. And there are so many positive components to being at school that we don't want for kids to be out of school for too long. So unless there's a contraindication of a serious medical condition, we do want kids to be back at school before they are 100% symptom free. We know that you could potentially be symptomatic for up to 4 weeks, and being out of school for 4 weeks will really wreak havoc on a return to learn plan and can really cause some damage for students emotionally as well as academically. Next slide. The clinical report from the American Academy of Pediatrics on return to learn says that students should be back to school when symptoms are tolerable, short-lived, and amenable to rest and intervention with supplements. And this has generally been coming down to a number of days to maybe a week. This was written in 2013 and is being updated right now, so there will be new information on this. But the reason for the American Academy of Pediatrics having a clinical report suggesting that kids come back to school sooner rather than later is that it is very difficult to create a return to learn plan if a student is not back at school. Next slide. So I'm going to just drill down a little deeper on those definitions that Julie talked about and the difference between return to school versus return to learn. In my opinion, return to school is the process of the student walking back into the classroom, physically walking back into the classroom. And that has a lot to do with the parent's comfort and the advice given by the healthcare provider. It's not really the educator's decision about when that student walks back into the classroom. And so the reason why we differentiate this is because if you're going to do good education to your stakeholders or your audience who are in charge of return to school, that's going to be the parents and the healthcare providers. That's not going to be a message that you're giving to the educators. Now, return to learn is what do the educators do once that student is seated back in their classroom? What do they need to do day to day to help them? And that audience is going to be your teachers, and it's going to be especially your classroom teachers, because if there's 28 days for recovery, that means that most of the recovery for concussion is going to be in the general ed classroom. So we differentiate these because you have to have different materials and different messages for these different groups. Next slide. So you can see that there are some examples. No, go ahead. Next slide. You were right, Connor. Great. Thank you. So you can see that there's some examples for return to school that are geared to parents about just your comfort level of getting back to school. So you don't want an anxious parent holding his child out for too long. And there's information for healthcare providers to be helping parents to feel comfortable and advising parents to get their students back to school while they're still symptomatic, and just reassuring them that the schools can manage those symptoms. So the message is different, the materials are different. When you talk about return to learn for educators, part of the barrier with having really good return to learn programs is that there's not yet been teacher specific information for return to learn. Language that is for the classroom teacher, not just for the nurse, not just for the school psychologist, not for the counselor, because they tend to get involved at about 4 to 6 weeks. We really need to support these students right in the classroom, day 1, day 2, when they come back to the classroom. And that means that we have to educate teachers. That's a large group to have to educate. And we need materials that are very specific to their language. And I'll show you some of those in a minute. Next slide. All right, now we're going to move on to the concussion management composition team. The consensus statement said that in your concussion management team, you need to have an academic monitor, a physical symptom monitor, you need to have medical providers involved, and you need to have the family involved. So there are 4 teams, and everyone agrees that we need to have those 4 teams involved. Whatever your return to learn program looks like, make sure these 4 teams are covered. We advise that all kids who have a concussion seek out medical evaluation for treatment and clearance. However, we all know that that's not necessarily the case. Seeing a medical doctor is not required unless you're going back to return to play legislation, going back to a sport. And so return to learn plans are best overseen and directed by school professionals who have the expertise and knowledge of school law and curriculum. So those are the 3 consensus that came out about this management team. Next slide. I'm going to show you an example of a product that does cover most of those components. So REAP, which, as I talked about in the beginning, which stands for Remove, Reduce, Educate, Adjust, Accommodate, and PACE, is an interdisciplinary team model that puts all these teams on the same page and helps to define everybody's roles. It has a return to play, return to learn component, and it's totally color coded to make it easier for anyone reading this manual. So you can see that there. Next slide. REAPconcussion.com is where all of the REAP live. Currently, we started REAP in Colorado in 2009. In the last year, I have partnered with NASHA to take over REAP. because NASHA has so many great connections with different states. We have been able to customize REAP and train in these different states. So the customized REAP is your own local story, your own law about return to play. And you can see the 15 states that have been customized with their own version of REAP that they use in their own state. Next slide. REAPconcussion.com will take you to this website where you can download any of those for free. And you can also get to the NASHA version of REAP at nasha.org. And NASHA can help customize as well as provide training for your states around the concussion management teams. Next slide. So concussion management is really moving away from just taking care of our athletes and returning them to play. The top level here of education and identification for a suspected concussion, and then at the bottom, removal or return to play are what's usually in our law. But what we really need to do is focus on all students, not just athletes, and all students must return to learn, even if they don't return to play. So we have to get them back to school. We have to work on your policy and procedure needs to have some process for notification and communication of all teams. And then there has to be return to learn, like I said, specifically to the teachers. So the points of vulnerability that was shared with you earlier actually is a roadmap to help you figure out in your schools, in your state, do you have those middle components covered? Not just removal from play and return to play, but all of the rest, return to school and return to learn as well. Next slide. What we want to have is all of these 4 teams working together, where everybody is coming up with their own plan, their own policies and procedures. But what we have had with Return to Learn, because it came from medicine and because it came from sports, is that there's a lot of direction to schools on Return to Learn that is still coming from a doctor's office, or still coming from an athletic trainer, or coming from a parent who is frustrated with the school that is asking the doctor to ask the school to do certain things. And if we want Return to Learn to be sustainable and robust, it cannot be predicated on sports or medical direction. It has to live within schools. And I'll show you how that can happen. Next slide. All right, we're moving on to progress monitoring. Everyone agrees that there needs to be symptom monitoring and academic monitoring no less than 1 time per week. And you can see that we have some examples here. There is both symptom and academic monitoring in REAP, as well as Get Schooled on Concussions. Next slide. All right, and now we're going to move on to the ascending levels of academic support. If this looks familiar to you, it might be because the public health model follows this as well, where basically we need to support our universal level on the bottom. And then if that's not enough, we move up to a higher level of support and intervention, and then up to the highest level. Well, schools have that process in place. It's either called the multi-tier system of support, MTSS, or response to intervention, RTI. So the 3 consensus statements in here suggest that schools already have existing safeguards for all students who struggle, regardless of the reason. And so concussion or brain injury would just be one more reason, and therefore we can already put them through our different tiers of support. Statement number 10 talks about that these tiers are increasing levels of support, and for a student who does not get better from a concussion in the typical time frame, they can move up to a next level and up to the highest level. And then finally, we do not need to wait for medical approval to move up to these levels of support. Anybody, although we want them to see a doctor, if they are not seeing a doctor, as the Brain Steps data would support, and my colleague, Dr. Egan Johnson, will probably talk a little bit more about this later, but 40+% of students that we support with brain injury in schools did not get their concussion in sports-related ways. So we need to take care of all students, whether they're athletes or not, and whether they fall under the return to play legislation. And the MTSS model allows us to do that, even if there isn't a medical doctor outside directing this. Next slide. So this is what MTSS or RTI looks like for schools for reading or for behavior. That's what's on the my left side there. The tier 1, 2, and 3, adopted by Bash et al. And what we did is we just took concussion and put that on the right side. So if 70% of students get better from a concussion within 28 days, our return to learn strategies and supports need to be in that general education classroom. If that's not enough to support that one particular student, and they're beginning to move into more moderate or severe brain injury, then we move them up to problem solving teams or flex teams or student assistant teams. And finally, within a school, whether we have a doctor involved or not, we can move them up to special education if an injury that started as a concussion ends up being a severe brain injury and ends up needing special education. So that's what this pyramid shows. And it's the same as a public health model. Next slide. So I'm going to show you a school-based and school-directed return to learn program. We've already talked about REAP having interventions on the bottom general education level. The Get Schooled on Concussion materials have curriculum for classroom teachers, and the delivery of that curriculum is through the Teacher Acute Concussion Tool, which I'll show you in a minute. If students don't get better with that, they can move up to a tier 2, which is curriculum for the nurses, the school psychologists, the counselors, to how to support them longer. And then for kids who need special education, they can move up to the cokidswithbraininjury.com, which is an entire website and intervention manual there for supporting students with severe brain injury who are moving into special education or even moderate brain injury. Next slide.
Hi, Karen. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to real quick give you a 2-minute warning for your segment.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So here's the here's the Get Schooled on Concussion website, and I will walk you through it. Next slide. All right. The Get Schooled materials have those curriculum that I showed you. The tip sheets are all available for teachers, and the delivery of that is going to be with the Teacher Acute Concussion Tool. Next slide. The 3 common effects that we teach teachers when we get in front of them is to focus on mental fatigue or symptoms, to focus on work completion, which is all about slow processing speed, and then to focus on short-term memory, which is all about tests and grades and mastery of the material. So what we want the teachers to see and resonate with is the next slide, please. Is basically for them to understand, for teachers to understand that they need to support students with symptoms in their classroom so that they will be present and hear instruction, that they need to work on a reasonable amount of workload, and that they need to find alternative ways to test them and give them grades. So we want teachers to be empowered that they know how to do this because they already do this for students with ADHD and learning disabilities. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. So the TACT is the delivery of this kind of training to the teachers. There are 10 states that currently have access to this, and they can train all of their students using, or all of their teachers using the TACT. Next slide. They just access the TACT training. The teachers are asked to answer 7 or 8 questions about how they teach. The TACT questionnaire takes less than 5 minutes. Next slide. And then they receive in their email a narrative of how to support students in their classroom for mental fatigue and manage their symptoms, how to cut back their work, and how to get them grades and mastery of the material. And the tip sheets are all included with that as well. So emails delivered to the teacher is the easiest way to get this information to the teachers. Next slide. And then emails will continue at week 2, 3, and 4 that will support that learning and begin to cut back and wean back the academic adjustments as time goes on. And tip sheets continue to be shared with teachers. Next slide. So the TACT is a way to train an entire staff with a 15-minute video and 5 minutes of the TACT. But then when a student has a concussion down the road, we also then support the teachers going back in, doing the TACT again, just in time around a student, a particular student with a concussion, so that they can apply those adjustments and supports right away. Next slide. As I said, there are currently 10 states that have a state subscription to all of these materials, free to all schools, public and private in these states, and elementary, middle, and high school. So look at this and see if any of your states are on this, and see if we can get some training for your teachers. Next slide. So when you're asking about school-based return to learn programs, you need to check these boxes over here to the left. You want to make sure that it is something that is sustainable, that it fits for the schools already, that is for an athlete or a non-athlete, that it's for all levels. And you can check your return to learn resources by checking off these boxes to see if this fits with the consensus statements. Next slide. And as I said, I'm not going to go into return to learn legislation because I know my colleagues are going to debate this a little bit later. But the last consensus statement said that we have existing educational models in place. So do we need legislation or not? So we'll have more discussion on that. All right, that's it for my slides. If we have time for questions, we can, and if not, we can move on.
I think we're going to hold questions, Karen. Until, Julie, are we going to hold them until, do you know when?
Yeah, I think if we have time after your segment, we can take a question or two before Hillary speaks. If we don't, we'll just hold it to the question and answer time. Thanks.
Okay.
That sounds
Thank
good.
you.
So I'm going to pass this over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Brenda Egan Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It is nice to meet you. I'm going to talk today about academic supports for students after brain injury who are participating in online learning. I am the project director for the state of Pennsylvania's BrainSteps Brain Injury School Consulting Program. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, BrainSteps was created in Pennsylvania in 2007 by the Pennsylvania Department of Health. We have unique funding partnership, our Pennsylvania Department of Health and our Pennsylvania Department of Education Bureau of Special Education fund the program for the entire state for all schools in Pennsylvania. Our teams are situated 30 teams in our educational intermediate units across the state. They are directed by the Brain Injury Association of Pennsylvania. And in 2016, Colorado's Department of Education adopted the BrainSteps model as part of their MindSource Brain Injury Network in conjunction with their Department of Education. And Dr. Janet Tyler, who's here today, is a co-director of that program. Next. BrainSteps provides support for all students with brain injuries, but 80% of the students that we receive referrals for are students with concussions. We have over 300 brain injury educational consultants in the state who serve on our 30 teams in Pennsylvania. Next. BrainSteps, the premise of our program is that if students with brain injury are immediately front-loaded upon their return to school with academic supports that include validated instructional practices. And if those practices and supports are monitored, phased out, continued, or increased over time, then students after a brain injury will receive appropriate levels of support based on need and changing needs over time, will not experience academic failure, and will remain in school and graduate. Next. So now we're going to get into COVID-19 and what we learned during the pandemic. Dr. Janet Tyler from Colorado's BrainSteps program and I, right when the school shut down last year, thought, okay, we need to create something for our teams to support students who are suddenly finding themselves in virtual learning. So we know that often students after brain injury have trouble with visual scanning, visual attention, visual memory, and cognitive fatigue. And any one of those can influence the others or any other symptoms of brain injury. For instance, if a student has visual attention difficulties, that could cause frustration, which can then trigger headaches. So symptoms play off of each other. Next slide. This is a parent quote. "My daughter had a horrible time with online school. She has to simultaneously navigate the school's course website, Dropbox, the online course schedule, and then Zoom for group projects, throwing in how to figure out how to open Word documents to type notes, download PowerPoint slide handouts, on and on and on and on and on. It makes everything just too much after a brain injury. Next slide. And we have to remember that the biggest piece of not being in person is that students are losing the touch with teachers who are in person with them in the school building. And now that they're remote, the teachers were implementing academic supports during the school day, such as cueing a student who's not paying attention by tapping them on the shoulder, or noticing that a student looks confused. So things that teachers naturally do if they're good teachers are now much more difficult because of the remote environment. Next slide. So now parents and families are replacing the teachers for those who are lucky enough to be home with the students during the school day. Many of our parents work and cannot be home. So we have grandparents stepping in, older siblings stepping in. So what the family needs to know and needs to think about are who is now responsible for monitoring, cueing, and reinforcing new learning for students if it's needed during the virtual learning environment. And these are some questions that they can ask. How can the supports be adjusted to fit the online learning needs? What are typical supports the school provides that could be provided now at home? Next slide. The physical activity and cognitive demands of attending in-person school can trigger symptoms such as light, sound, movements. However, when a student's at home, the student now has more control over the environmental symptom triggers. So this can be a benefit of being at home after a brain injury. Next slide. Online learning may result in increased cognitive fatigue due to screen time. So parents or family members could build in quick brain breaks that could be beneficial for the student. We want to keep the student under their symptom threshold. We don't want students to start spiking symptoms such as headache or cognitive fatigue. Scheduling breaks automatically during the day. The student can use a timer. And also we know now that sleep maintenance is critical because if a student is not getting an appropriate amount of sleep, or if they're getting too much sleep and not sleeping at night, this will impact their symptoms. It will exacerbate them, make them worse. Next slide. When a student's at home, they tend to have more flexible scheduling. So it may be easier for a student to go and attend half-day classes versus full day. They can make up classes if they're recorded. They could rearrange courses that way because some students do better in the morning than in the afternoon with their symptoms and vice versa. Next slide. Online learning may decrease student mental health issues. We have been hearing a lot in the media about the increase in student mental health issues. But for some students, it could be a decrease also in mental health issues because when students are home and learning more online, more focused effort can go towards learning rather than being in the school environment where maybe before they were worrying about school anxiety issues, bullies, or other things that could impact a student's ability to learn. Next slide. When thinking about mental health after brain injury, we need to make sure that the parents, the school counselor, school psychologist, whoever in the school environment is aware of red flag signs to look for in our students regarding depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, to name a few. School staff can use screening tools virtually if they know a student's had a brain injury. They can schedule private online sessions to meet with students. They can talk to the parents about maybe getting outside community-based mental health services in place. Next slide. And online learning can be also difficult for students after a brain injury because of the physical process of having to type answers, especially if they have slowed mental processing after their injury. So during online learning, asynchronous activities may be the best during the initial days of recovery, less cognitively demanding on a student. Next slide. I'm going to skip through some of these slides just for time. You will have them all in your handout though, and you can just read them and they will make sense. Next slide. Ask the teacher to pre-record a lesson for a parent. So some of our teachers are knowing that there are some family members at home that are reinforcing learning for some of our students after a brain injury. Some of our teachers are recording mini sessions to teach the parents the concept before it's introduced to the student during the online session. And this way, the parent is better prepared to assist the student. And this is an awesome way that can really help the parent feel confident and then reinforcing what the students will be doing. Next. Okay, next. Also, it's so important that we teach our students self-advocacy skills. They should be asking themselves now, if they're in virtual learning, do I understand what I just learned? And if not, how can I contact the teacher for help? We have heard so many students that just get lost in the noise of virtual learning. They aren't asking teachers for, when they don't understand something. They don't have that time in between classes to just go up to the teacher when they're leaving the class. So we have a lot of students that are sliding backwards because we need to give them scripts so they feel confident and understand how to approach their teachers. Concretely, could I ask for a meeting with the teacher? Could I email the teacher? Role play, answers and questions. Next slide. Okay, this slide is a blank, clean desktop, right? This is what we expect a student's desktop to look like. However, next slide. This is what many of our students' desktops look like. So we can't take for granted that in a virtual environment, we have to work with our students, all students, on how to organize their desktops so they're able to find their folders. Organization after brain injury is difficult in many cases. So we can't expect it to be any easier online, and we have to actually teach the students the strategies so that they know how to organize themselves. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this slide has 3 of our resources. If you go to our website, brainsteps.net, we have wonderful resources, and we also are debuting our brand new website within about a month or 2 that's going to have probably almost 100 trainings on it. But here are some specific to online learning. So we have a guidance document. We have a 37-minute presentation that goes more in detail of everything I was just talking about today, only it gives you even more. Next slide. This is our website. Next slide. That's my contact information. You can just Google BrainSteps, it'll pull me up. And now, I'm sorry that I went so fast, but I wanted to make sure that I gave time to the key presenter for today. And that is Hillary McLean, who has become a friend of mine through the work that we have done here in Pennsylvania with the BrainSteps program. And she's going to talk about her lived experience of severe traumatic brain injury with her son, Declan.
Hi, everyone. If I can make it through this without crying, it will be great, because I'm just a big crybaby and I cry every time I go to anything pertaining to this kid. So this is me and Declan. This is a couple years ago. So yes, he does have glasses now. I do want to make note that I did see there were some people that do have traumatic brain injury on this, and there are some pictures on here that may be a trigger for you. So you can leave for a little bit and then come back in like 5 minutes and you'll be good. So here goes. Next slide. This is Declan's story. So this little boy here in the red shirt, that is Declan. This is day before his injury. And this is my other son, Colin. Colin is 7 in this picture and Declan is 3. Here it was, I got divorced. I went and bought my new house. This was a picture of in front of the new house. And we decided to go to an amusement park the next day. We were going there just to go swimming. Declan needed tubes in his ears, so he kept getting ear infections constantly. And next day, go ahead, Ford. We were going to go to get the tubes put in. So we decided we're going to go swim before we ended up having his tube surgery, because once you get tubes in your ears, you can't go swimming for a while. It was August. So, hey, we're going to go swimming, right? Next picture. This is that day. It was August 11th, 2016. Declan went on a ride with his brother. We went to an amusement park. With that amusement park, there is a pool. We were supposed to go just to the pool section. Instead, there was nobody at the amusement park because it was like 10:30 in the morning. Nobody was there yet. It was a Thursday. I don't ride the rides, so I sat down on the bench. Colin and Declan both went on the ride together, and Declan didn't make it off the ride. He got catapulted whenever they made the ride made a turn. Declan was sitting in the wrong seat. His brother should have been in the opening of the ride, and he was not. And he got catapulted, hit a pole, and then fell 40 feet on his head. Next slide. So this here is what life has turned into. Declan, I thought when I saw him that his forehead had a little gash, and I thought that he was just going to the hospital for stitches. And I called his dad and I said that, hey, I think Declan is just going to the hospital to get a couple stitches. He fell off a ride, not that big of a deal. While we were there, they said because it is a head injury, they are going to send him to Children's Hospital. He's being life flighted. I cannot get on the life flight. They said for weight purposes. I'm not a big person, by the way, but whatever. For weight purposes, I can't go on, and I have to drive there. It took me an hour and a half to get to the hospital. And when I got there, that top middle picture is what I saw. They told me that he was going to be either dead or paralyzed. That gash by his forehead and the one by his ear was enough. It was shattered, like his skull was shattered. They took out a big hunk of his skull, like half of his head, and they said they needed his brain to swell. It was swollen on that side, and he's on life support. On the upper left-hand picture is where he started having seizures. And then the left-hand picture is like halfway through all of this. He is like withdrawing from medications. As you see, his eye is closed. That's because his orbit of his eye was broken and his brain is coming through his eye. Next picture. This is rehab, which was absolute hell. I don't have another explanation for it. Rehab is where, sorry guys, I started having PTSD problems. They leave him there and he's in a room and he's in a tent and there's 2 nurses and there's 12 kids. And if you're not there, those kids have nobody. Yeah, it was awful. You look at the picture on the left and he's in therapies a lot. It's like 3 hours of therapy. You look at the pictures and you say, how did my life turn into this? One day he's okay. The next day he's wearing a helmet. Next picture. Go next. He was 3 years old. Like I said, he got the skull taken out and then eventually he got the skull put back in. It's plastic. The beauty, if there is a beauty, the beauty of all of this is, as you see, I work at the University of Pittsburgh and I'm in the dental school, but the school is very big with research, and my boss happens to be the chair of craniofacial rehabilitation, and they try to grow brains, like bone back, and they want to try to put flaps in that would be bone instead of being plastic because it's a less rate of infection, blah, blah, blah. So I had him on my team. I also have the dean of the school is a plastic surgeon. He's the chair of plastic surgery. And he did Declan's facial surgery. So it was him mixed with the neurosurgeon that took the, I guess, the brain out, repaired his eye, did whatever to get his eye to stop drooping, and then put everything back. So this is the picture actually of him getting more EEGs, but he looks pretty darn good. Next picture. Sorry, I'm snotty, guys. Moving further ahead, this is what he looks like today if I would cut his hair short. Thank God he has really thick hair, so his hair can cover up his scars. Him being 8 years old now, he's very aware of his scars. I'm not sure if he's bullied at school. I'm not sure what people say to him, but he does sort of like a comb over, like a Donald Trump comb over, to cover up all these scars, and he doesn't want people to see them. He's very self-conscious of them. Next slide. Declan's school experience is challenging. These three pictures are because he's sick a lot. He is still having seizures. He has several seizures a day, would be my guess if he wasn't on the medications, but the medications make him tired and they make him dizzy. And even yesterday was his birthday. He turned 8 yesterday, and he's sleeping and he's crying that he can't make it to his school party because the medications make him dizzy. It's almost as a parent that I want to take the medications myself to see what it makes you feel like, so I can relate to him, because it's very hard to relate to what he says. But he says he's dizzy, and if you have him walk, which he puts himself on the bus and he goes, gets off the bus and does face plants in school, because he wants to be part of school. So currently he doesn't have his glasses, and his nose is road rashed because he fell on the pavement again because he was trying to be with everybody else and he was dizzy. So this is a lot of my days. Next picture. Returning to school. He was 5 years old when I got him into kindergarten. He went to public school. I moved. So I was in a district that I could afford because I just got divorced. I had to move. I had to up and move because that district did not have the finances, the funding, whatever, to have a kid like Declan in the district. I didn't have a choice. I up and I moved. I moved to the best public school in my county. And the issues that we have right now are his impulsiveness that he is on Concerto for, the inability of the teachers to teach him, and also there's not enough support. They do not have enough support in these schools, period. He does have seizures at school. His new thing is he's faking seizures because he doesn't want to do something, or he's mad that he missed recess because he has a therapy. So last week I got a phone call that he was staring to make it look like he had a seizure so he could miss the therapy and go to recess. My phone does not stop ringing, that it's the school calling me constantly. I work about an hour away from the school. I started driving to school instead of taking public transportation and paying for the parking every day, because when I gotta go, I can't wait for a bus for an hour. I have to go. And he does have frequent dizziness due to his medications. Next slide. The ongoing issues. He has a lot of EEGs. He has headaches a lot. He says he points to the front of his head. They're right in the middle of his forehead. He says that he doesn't like light. He says, don't talk to me because he can't, I guess, comprehend what you're saying. I don't know, but it's don't talk to me. It's too loud, and turn off the lights, and he puts a blanket over his head. He's pretty emotional. So if you get angry, like you parents do, and you yell at your kid, if you yell at him, he loses his mind and he starts crying. So it makes it very hard that you have to stay very monotone and not lose your patience on him. Even when you know that he can do things and he's acting like he can't, you cannot show frustration because he can't handle it. If other people, so there's 4 kids in our house. I got remarried. This kid on the lower left-hand side, that's Grayson. He's his stepbrother. They're 11 months apart. If you're yelling at Grayson, Declan will start crying because you're yelling at him. So it's very challenging to have 4 kids and you can't raise your voice. So add that to the mix. And again, you have no idea what the side effects of the medications are. Next slide. Down here, the bottom left-hand side, that's Declan. He isn't allowed to do anything. So, you know, with COVID happening, everybody's stuck at home. The kids are jumping on trampolines, and he can't do anything. He kind of just sits there and watches everybody else participate. He can't do the soccer because you can't do contact sports. He can't do the hockey. He can't do the baseball. He can't do football. He can't do flag football. He can't do anything. So he does a lot of sitting. And because he does a lot of sitting, he has gained some weight as an 8-year-old. Next slide. Frequent occurrences, very unpredictable. This one on the upper left-hand side, those medications make him nauseous. So he's sleeping there, vomiting into a garbage can. We have hospital stays often. We have ambulance calls a lot. I have 2 ambulance companies on call to come because when he has seizures, he turns blue and I can't handle it. And I don't know, I guess I have the thingy to shoot up his nose, but I can't do it. And I get it. I work in a dental school. I give shots to everybody else all day. I cannot do it to him. For some reason, I cannot do it. So yeah, I have the ambulance coming and basically holding my hand through all of this. This stuff happens at school. He misses school and I miss an awful lot of work. Next slide. Here's another day of not feeling well. This cat that I had to throw in here, this is a Sphynx cat. They have no fur. And the reason why I got this cat is because it's supposed to be a therapy cat. They're cold all the time and they want to be held. So if Declan holds the cat with one hand, it forces him to use the other arm. So if anybody's on here that you have neglect of one side, a Sphynx cat works pretty well. So the cats kind of hang out with him. I got 2 of them for him. Next slide. But it's also something else you have to take care of. This is him, actually, that's his face plant. That's what his nose looks like, and he broke his glasses. And then a couple days before, he had a seizure in karate. So I put him in karate. No, he's not sparring. I put him in karate as a form of therapy because we are 4.5 years out. Sending him to OT to button a button or to zip up a shirt or whatever is, it doesn't work out for him anymore. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to participate. He wants to be like everybody else. So I put him in karate where he's learning the kicks. He has to lift up his left foot. He has to use, you know, left foot and right hand simultaneously. And I'm trying to regain the connections that are damaged, dead, whatever, to get him to function again. Next slide. So Brain Steps has been amazing. On the upper left, it's Brenda and Natalie. Those are my two contacts, my 2 go-tos. They have helped tremendously because I've noticed with the school district, they don't know how to help me. They don't know how to teach him. They don't know what they're doing because Declan is one of a kind. You start off a kid, which is incredibly hard, going to kindergarten and getting your kid ready for special needs classes. It's devastating, especially because the day before he was okay. And you think back and wonder what he would have been if this didn't happen. But you try not to think backwards, you go forward. You have a really hard time advocating when you go to these IEP meetings. One, because there's languages in there that you don't understand. Two, you don't know what type of issues or what type of programs are out there that can help the kid. And that is where Natalie and Brenda both came in and they fight for me. They, like how you saw me crying a couple minutes ago, that's what our meetings are like. They're very intimidating because there's like 15 people in the classroom or 15 people in our Zoom meetings or our conference calls or whatever. And you have to remember that everybody in the school district is sort of against me. Why? Because Declan costs them money. Why? Because they don't want and they know they don't have the support to help him. A really good story is that right before COVID, they deemed Declan unlearnable. They said that he should be in autistic classes and that he just needs the support of like everyday learning. And that's it. COVID happened and I kept him at home and I realized this kid cannot, he has like the attention span of a gnat. I was trying to, he didn't even know his name. So he was in first grade and he could not spell his name, Declan. He could not do it. I would start with DE and then he would be looking at a dust particle falling from the sky. I contacted the neurology department and they said, yes, we're going to put him on some Ritalin. It was too many. It was like every 3 hours I'm throwing pills down his throat and it got to be too much. So we did the Concerta. He's doing absolutely fantastic on it. It's 36 milligrams. He's doing great. What can we do next? Well, we're still in COVID and he doesn't want to stare at a computer. So I hired a tutor for him and she spent a half hour a day reading with him because the school district said he can't read. And actually he didn't know his alphabet and he didn't know the letter sounds. So how can you read if you don't know the letter sounds in the alphabet? She taught him that in 6 weeks and he went back to school. You know, he's in second grade now, knowing how to read, knowing his letter sounds. I taught him his name, Declan McLean. He knows how old he is. And he's starting to read in the end of kindergarten level. So he's about 1.5 years behind. With Natalie and Brenda, they both went into these meetings with me and pushed for assistive technology. And the school district was really not pushing for it. And Natalie and Brenda are both like, no, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you have to do this for him. And how is he supposed to learn if he can't write? What do you expect from him? And they set up these meetings with these assisted people to come into the school and teach the teachers how to use these programs, even though the school district is saying, no, they don't have money for it. So we got that moving along. They got me the information to get him through the school to have a summer program because they weren't going to push him into summer school. And it was Brenda that told them, no, he's going to get in through to some summer school. And, you know, he qualifies for it through the brain injuries. And it's really hard to advocate for your kid when you don't know the rules. And I'm just playing the game just like everybody else. You learn 4.5 years later that your kid becomes very old. He's no longer new. He's no longer something exciting. He's a kid that he's stagnant is a good word. He's stagnant. And when your kid is stagnant, people stop giving to him. Both Natalie and Brenda did not give up on him, and they come and see him and they do whatever it is that he needs to push him forward. They've even tried to research grants for me because I put him in hippotherapy to try to get use of that left side off of a horse, which is pretty tremendous. I didn't find a grant, but we did look. Summer programs. Brenda was trying to get me information in Harrisburg to get a brain injury summer program for him. And just everything that Brain Steps has done has been absolutely amazing. And I can't imagine going through life by myself without having the support, because I can't do it. I cannot do it. I can't stress that enough, that I cannot do it on my own. And having a brain injured kid, you lose track of yourself. So my doctor's appointments don't happen. Anything for me, my gym membership is gone. Everything for me is gone, and everything is focusing on Declan. And there's pieces of Declan that I can't possibly do on my own, and teaching is one of them. Next slide. Just like I just said, Declan would not have made it as far as he did without the guidance and expertise of those two. There have been many times, as you see through this thing, that I become very overwhelmed and I can't hold myself together, because you become to the point where you want to smack your face against a wall because nobody listens. I'm blessed. I'm beyond blessed to have a team that didn't give up. That is my only team that didn't give up. The hospitals gave up on him. I'm actually going to a new hospital because he has become stagnant. And being in healthcare, any of you guys who have medical issues, you become stagnant to the doctor. He needs a new set of eyes, a new group of people that are excited and they want to treat him. And you just have to keep moving and rolling with it, or you're not going to get any help. This team never left me. They never wiped their hands free of me and left. They stayed the entire time, through me crying, through my phone calls, through my text messages, through my emails. They were there and they answered everything the whole way through. Next slide. So this is Declan, first day of second grade. That's what he looks like. So he wants to grow up to be a cop. That will never happen. And there he is. Next slide. We do have some special moments. On the left-hand side, that is my new husband, my second husband, Jason. He just got his bachelor's degree, and Declan is looking at him, laughing at his glasses when Declan has the same glasses on and doesn't realize it. It's pretty cute. It's pretty funny. The middle picture is Declan graduating his kindergarten. Actually, that was preschool. His preschool graduation, we had a big to-do. And then this other kid in this upper right hand is my boss's kid. So they were both born on the same day, a year apart from each other. So they hang out a lot. So next picture. And that's that. This is Colin on the upper right hand side. That's Colin and Declan now. So Colin is now 12. Declan is 8. And yeah, if you want a question about Colin, yes, he does have issues as well, because he blames himself for the accident. So it's not only dealing with one kid, you're dealing with 2 kids on a day that was just supposed to be swimming. And that's what we have. Does anybody have any questions? Somebody wrote, I saw in the chat, about neurofunctioning something or other, functional neurology. I went to one, and the guy is so sweet. He doesn't charge me. So as you can imagine, my medical debt is 2 million or so. It's up there, and my insurance is maxed every year. I did go to this neurofunctional guy. He doesn't charge me for the doctor's appointments, which is great. He wanted to try to get Declan off the seizure meds by giving him like a keto diet. And part of me, I can't do it. 1, because I can't afford it. 2, because what else is going to be taken away from this kid? He can't do anything. He doesn't get to be like any other kid. He can't go to Disney World. He doesn't get to go to Kennywood. He doesn't get to go to water parks. He can't do trampolines. He can't play a sport. So now I'm going to take his food away from him too. And that is why I can't change his diet. I can't. He has to make that decision for himself when he's older, because I just can't take everything away from this kid. Anything else? I think that's it.
Hillary, thank you so much for sharing your powerful story today. Just can't thank you enough for your time today and what you've shared with us. Um, if there are any questions, we have some time before the break. If you have questions for Karen or Brenda, or if you think of anything else for Hillary, like I said, we've got some time before the break. You can keep throwing your questions in the chat. If we're not seeing any activity, we can cut to the break a little early.
Thank you guys for having me. And I can't recommend Brenda and Natalie from Brain Steps enough. Like, I don't know any of you guys, and I can't express how unbelievably blessed I am to have them in my life. And we
Hillary,
shall see what happens to this kid.
Hillary, I just want to read off some of the wonderful comments that are coming into the chat here. I'm not sure if you can see them. Thank you, Hillary. Wow, what a strong mom. Thank you, Hillary. You did an amazing job depicting about your son. Just lots of thank you for sharing here. And so there's just so much appreciation coming into the chat here for you and for sharing your story.
It is like one of those things that you say, I can't believe this just happened to me. You know what I mean? Like, you try to tell anybody and it's like, I cannot, like, who do you know has a kid that fell off of a roller coaster? You know, it's just really, really mind blowing. Like, it's just a made up story on the Hallmark Channel, but it's not, it's a living hell. And we just get through.
Another comment. Thank you, Hillary. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you for sharing your story and heart. You and Declan are both amazing, resilient people. Hillary, I wonder if I can ask, what are your greatest hopes for Declan moving forward?
I hope he doesn't need me the rest of his life, because here we go again with the tears. Most mornings are a struggle to get me to work, because when he knows I go to work, he's sick. So it's hard to get him on the bus. So my morning struggle with 4 kids is also, I don't put my scrubs on until he leaves. And I tell him that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait for him all day. And then he's not sick and he's not having anxiety issues. I hope he grows out of these seizures. I hope he can live a normal life. Whatever normal would be, I hope he doesn't need me, because nobody takes care of him the way a mom does. His own dad does not take care of him the way a mom does. And everybody will just give up on him. Somebody said, did I sue the park? Yes, I did. And that's another, now I'm dealing with attorneys. And it's a lot. I'm dealing with attorneys. I'm dealing with these medical bills are forwarded to attorneys. Everything that I want to do, I can't, because I can't afford it. Do I put him in private school? What private school do I put him in? Is a private school going to even take him? Do private schools do IEPs? From what I'm reading, a lot of them don't. Do private schools have the funding? Usually private schools are people who are wealthy and their kids are incredibly bright. What, I'm going to stick him in a classroom with all autistic kids, and he's not autistic. So his motor skills are pretty on point. But when you go and ask him, Declan, what is 28? He doesn't know what that is. Declan, can you read me these directions? He can read a couple words off of it. And then it's almost like he can read it, but he doesn't know what it means. I did set up a GoFundMe whenever this all happened. And it's since closed. It was like 5 years ago. One of my friends did set up a GoFundMe that I bought him weighted blankets. I bought him a bed. He needed a lower bed. He's not allowed having bunk beds. I had rails put on his bed. The sad thing is we have a 4-story house. So if anybody wants to buy me a house that's 1 level, that would be great. But yeah, that's that.
Thank you, Hillary. Really appreciate it. If anyone has any other questions for any of the speakers today, you can stick them in the chat. If not, maybe we go to break a few minutes early.
That sounds good, Dana. Should we do a full 30 minutes and come back at 4 minutes to the hour?
That
5 minutes
sounds
to the hour?
terrific. Thank you, Connor.
Okay, we'll do that, and there'll be a little bit of music for everyone in that time. They'll come back to 5 minutes before the hour.
All right, if folks want to start trickling back in from break, we'll give everyone about another minute or so to come on back. And the next pieces that are coming up for conversation are the great debate, the facilitated discussion on to legislate or not to legislate, and then an open discussion where we'll answer some questions from everyone in the chat function here, as well as some questions for the panelists. So Connor, if you want to go on to the next slide here, and this next slide here just has the future sessions, the next 2 weeks of these TBI Tuesdays, just as a reminder. And again, if you do want to attend the future sessions, you have to sign up for each one individually. So next Tuesday, March 30th, will be Justice for All, serving individuals with brain injury across the justice system. And Connor just put that link into the chat box there. And then our final event of the series will be April 6th, 2 Tuesdays from now, maximizing the effectiveness of advisory boards through full participation. And again, that link is also in the chat box there. Okay, let's go on to the next slide here. So this is our discussion coming up, and I'll go ahead and turn things over to Dave Cracky and Dr. Brenda Egan-Johnson from earlier. And if you folks want to introduce yourselves as well.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it very much. My name is Dave Cracky. I currently serve as Oregon's Brain Injury Advocate Coordinator. Before we start, I would like to thank ACL for this opportunity. I definitely miss seeing everyone in person. A special thanks to Tom and to Dana for their leadership during this very, very difficult year. I have a legal background. In 1990, I passed the bar in the state of Oregon. I was a litigator enforcing private rights of action for 28 years before being appointed Oregon's Brain Injury Advocate Coordinator in 2018. I have done a lot of appellate work in the appellate courts. I have also done a fair amount of legislative work, having authored or co-authored 6 laws in the state of Oregon and another 3 in the works this legislative session. In my experience, the power of law is to effectuate change. The legislative history that I've been involved with, at least in part, has been focused on the very issues that we're talking about today. I was a co-author of Max's Law, which was the nation's first enacted youth concussion law. We were right there with the state of Washington, and we came up, Oregon and Washington came up with a framework for laws that have now been instituted in the other 48 states as well, commonly known as return to play. I then also was on the team that expanded the Max's Law provisions to the entire state of Oregon, all young athletes in the state of Oregon, understanding that that first law was not quite enough to really get to where we wanted to, which was coverage, return to play protocol for all young athletes. In 2020, last legislative session, along with my colleague Melissa McCart at the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training out of the University of Oregon, we co-authored a bill called, or known as HB House Bill 4140, that will provide academic accommodations to our students returning to school after concussion. We saw problems that were not going away voluntarily. We saw problems that weren't being fixed through voluntary compliance. So I'm going to frame the issue today as being what is the most effective way that we can bring about change, necessary societal change throughout society. Is it voluntary change by whatever entity or system is affected, or is it through legislative mandate? And the position that I'm taking here today is that legislation is the most effective way to establish or create that societal-wide change. We have a lot of history that we can look at federally and on state-by-state level. For instance, we had the ADA passed in 1973 because we knew that people with disabilities needed specific accommodations, but those accommodations were not happening, essentially voluntarily. When we saw that Section 504 was perhaps not being implemented as widely as it should after 1973, we implemented the IDEA in 1975, basically because we saw that the problem was not being addressed, and we needed to get beyond that essentially voluntary compliance. Now, some, of course, were undoubtedly working, but without the IDEA, for instance, we might not have the accommodations that we heard so much about in Declan's very tragic story right before the break. Declan's accommodations were mandatory, and as a result, he is receiving them. I also believe that there is a true level of accountability when you legislate action. There are consequences for failure to comply. If it's a voluntary responsibility, I do not believe that there are those similar types of accountability. I have lost the screen in terms of the slides themselves, but if you can please put up the first slide, and I'm going to start showing examples of legislation, and if they are up and I'm just not seeing them. Thank you, Connor, appreciate that. I've thought about relevant legislation with regard to the topics that we're talking about today. For instance, helmet laws. Prior to helmet laws, everyone knew, or not everyone knew, but a lot of people knew that kids and adults should be wearing helmets when they are bike riding. That was somewhat common sense, but it was not happening for a variety of reasons. Then what we did across the states is various states have implemented helmet laws. What we see in this graph is that prior to the laws, that's indicated by the blue line. These are individual studies that demonstrate what was going on before those helmet laws were enforced or were in place. With the orange lines, we see significant more compliance. In other words, significant more use of helmets. Again, getting back to the point, what is the goal? The goal here is to make sure that people have helmets on their heads when they go out to ride their bikes. And how do we reach that goal with maximum participation? What I think this graph clearly shows is if it's voluntary, you're not going to get the same level of compliance as if it is legislatively mandated. Okay, next slide, please. This is a quote from one of those studies. Granted, it's back from 2006, but it's still applicable. Flat out, legislation increased helmet use among cyclists, particularly younger age groups, and those with low pre-intervention helmet wearing proportions. These results support legislative interventions in populations without helmet legislation. Next slide, please. These examples extend into the schools as well. And this slide indicates that in 2019, the state of Oregon did a follow-up study on the effectiveness of Max's law. Max's law is the law that I mentioned at the outset, where we mandated return to play protocol, concussion protocols in our high schools. Now, prior to Max's law, a certain percent of the high school coaches knew what to do if a student was concussed. However, many either didn't know or ignored it for the benefit of getting a player back out on a field. Dr. McAvoy, in her final slide, indicated that return to learn laws can work, quote, if embedded into existing educational frameworks. And the key word for me in that phrase, which I totally agree with, is embedded. And so the question becomes, how do we embed? Pre-Max's law, pre the return to play protocols, we had, let's go to the next slide, please. We had very little adoption of the training, removal, and clearance protocols. This slide basically just indicates what almost all return to play laws mandate, and we can read them. Let's go to the next slide. 10 years after the implementation of Max's law, we did a survey here, as I just mentioned, and these are the results of how Max's law has been implemented in high schools throughout the state of Oregon. You see on the left the various provisions or requirements under Max's law, and the orange bar going out to the right demonstrates, as you will see, near universal compliance with those mandates. I know that prior to Max's law, those orange lines would be significantly less, probably somewhere around the 25%. After Max's law, however, we're seeing near total compliance. Let's go to the next slide, please. Question then becomes, why do we need legislation? Max's law, the return to play mandates law, have been nearly universally implemented in Oregon high schools. And now we look at the return to school laws, and without a return to school mandate, only 21% of schools surveyed had an active concussion management team. If our goal is to have an active concussion management team in every school, using the models that I've just discussed, it seems that legislation will get us there. Again, keeping our eye on the prize. We want these return to school protocols to be in every single school, not just a select few. We saw from one of the prior slides that 10 states have voluntarily adopted the wonderful, don't get me wrong, absolutely wonderful BrainSteps program protocols, but that leaves 40 states without. I postulate that legislation is a building block, and it does not preclude the method of implementation. Legislation can be made better in the future, but it has to start somewhere, and the process needs to have teeth. By teeth, I mean enforcement rights. And I would postulate that without that enforcement right, then it will not be effective. So in a nutshell, that's my argument for why we need legislation. And for her view now, we are going to turn to Dr. Brenda Egan-Johnson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now I spoke earlier, I'm the director of Pennsylvania's BrainSteps program. And I'm going to talk to you, next slide. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk to you about return to learn, to legislate or not legislate, Pennsylvania's experience with this. Next slide. This was published in the Network for Public Health back in 2015, and someone had sent it to me. I didn't know it was going to be written, but next slide. In it, you could see, I highlighted it, if you could tell, in orange, a little box that says informal return to learn approaches. Some states have addressed academic reentry regarding concussion outside the legislative or regulatory realm. One such example is Pennsylvania, which has established the BrainSteps program. And I talked with you earlier today about what the Brain Steps program was. And so next slide. Is that the right slide? Go back one. Okay, next. Okay, so the Brain Steps program that I talked to you about earlier will work with any student in the state of Pennsylvania that has any severity of acquired brain injury that occurs after birth, at any point in time in a child's life after birth. So every state now has a return to play law, which is great. Those are extremely important. There's no debating that. And so all of our states have that now for return to sports after a concussion. There are rules in place, as Mr. Cracky was talking about. So the Brain Steps program in Pennsylvania, our return to play law was enacted in July of 2012. Brain Steps had been in existence supporting students with concussions and all severities of acquired brain injury since 2007. So what was happening was when our law was enacted, we saw a surge in the number of concussions that were referred to us, student concussions, because the emergency room doctors, we train them to make referrals to us. So they were making automatic referrals to the Brain Steps program. And when a referral comes into us, to one of our 30 teams, what happens is parents need to sign a consent form. Well, we know that about 70% of all concussions recover within 4 weeks. Those students recover within about 4 weeks, most within about 2 weeks. So by the time the parents signed our form and returned the form to the Brain Steps team, these students have recovered, the great majority. So our Department of our Department of Education at that point said, hey, we need to figure out some way to manage students with concussion at the school district level before a referral is made to the Brain Steps team, which is a higher level consulting team, for students who don't recover within that initial 4 to 6 weeks. So in 2013, we rolled out with the Department of Education a return to learn protocol, and our Department of Health was involved also. And we to date have trained over 3,000 school-based return to learn concussion management teams. It's free, it's online. And now we also have Colorado, who's been doing it with us since 2016. Next slide. So this is what the process looks like for any student that has a concussion. The Return to Learn concussion management team will meet, and that team consists of an academic monitor and a symptom monitor. So we require 2 monitors. Why do we require 2? Well, the literature suggests best practice is 1, but we learned fairly quickly that if it was all up to 1 person, it was usually our school nurses, and usually then they became overwhelmed. So we needed to have 2, an academic monitor who monitors academics with the teachers, and a symptom monitor. So we have a process that begins as soon as the student sustains a concussion. The parents, the school team, the concussion team, the medical professional, and if the student's an athlete, the athletic trainer or coach can meet together, or supposed to meet together in some form. And then they have a toolkit that they use to not only monitor academics and symptoms, but to adjust the student's academic supports until the student has recovered. If a student hits that 4-week mark and has not recovered, then the school will make a referral to the Brain Steps program, where we step in and support all of these other little circles here. Sometimes a student may not recover, but we tend to see a lot of students who are protracted and end up in that 4 to 6 week range. Within a few months, the majority of them do resolve. A very small percentage go on to have potentially lifelong issues. Next slide. So we offer a 5.5-hour asynchronous online interactive 7-module course. It was created in conjunction with the Colorado Department of Education's Brain Steps program and Pennsylvania's program. And the teams are trained in how to use the toolkit to monitor the academics and symptoms and a step-by-step return to learn protocol that many of our districts then turn into their policy. Next slide. This is just a screenshot of the training management system. Next slide. So in 2016, Dr. Mark Halstead, who, he's a pediatrician who does a lot of work around return to learn for the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Karen McAvoy, who you heard a little bit ago, and I got together and we wrote an article, I think, where was this at? Oh, it was in the Journal of Pediatrics, that was called Expanding Concussion Laws, Not Necessary for Return to Learning After Concussion. Next slide. Why? Why do we write this? Well, educational support frameworks in schools, public schools, it already exists to aid students with medical disabilities who rise to the level of needing more intensive intervention. So for instance, students who have diabetes, students who have seizure disorders, schools are used to working with students who struggle to learn, and there are already educational frameworks that we felt concussion can fit nicely within, rather than having additional legislation that schools really, no one likes more laws. Instead, what's needed is educate the general education teachers about concussion. Specifically, what is it and how do you make short-term academic supports within the general education classroom to impact the majority of students with concussions that resolve in those initial weeks? However, legislation is good in that it does come with an increase in awareness. So society does become more aware of a problem, and that's a good thing. So for return to learn, it may be more appropriate, though, to use the time and funding to enhance existing educational resources. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, Karen had showed this earlier, establishing consensus for essential elements in returning to learn following a concussion. This was the first national return to learn consensus that was published in the Journal of School Health this past fall. And we do have a slide, next slide, a little section that talks about, is legislation something that should be done for return to learn? There are pros. So the pros of enacting legislation that are written in this paper is, first, there is an increased awareness of concussion and resulting learning impacts among educators if it's legislated. Second, potentially improved and more consistent communication among school, family, and healthcare providers who serve on the concussion management team. And third, there's higher school accountability for return to learn academic supports at school. Next slide. The drawbacks of enacting return to learn legislation is that it may be interpreted to apply only to sports-related concussions if it's embedded in the sports-related concussion laws. We have a lot of schools that are very quick to say, oh, it's student athletes. That's who we're focusing on. When in all reality, for instance, in Pennsylvania, the Brain Steps program, it's about 49% of our students who are taking longer to recover from their concussion are from non-sports related injuries, such as motor vehicle collisions or falls or assault and abuse, whereas about 51% are from sports related concussions. So there's a lot of non-sports related concussions out there. Also, number two, another drawback is that it does not provide the ability to direct specific return to learn guidelines towards school districts which exert local control. And third, it doesn't account for the varying needs and resources of districts. And this is a big one. So really, our schools need training. Next slide. Number 4, it may not be necessary in light of the already existing educational laws that require districts to support all students regardless of medical diagnosis, even if it's temporary. So for instance, there are 504 plans that a student may qualify for if they have a medical diagnosis of a concussion and if it is substantially limiting a major life function, such as thinking, reading, concentrating, even sleeping. Number 5, and this is what I keep circling around to, legislation currently does not include funding for school personnel training. So that's where the disconnect is. Legislation raises awareness, but who's training? Who's offering the training? Who's paying for the training? That is what, and it needs to be good training. You want to have solid training. So we really need to focus on changing the paradigm, shifting it, because currently a lot of adults grew up thinking that concussions were not a big deal. Research now tells us they are a big deal. And because of that new research, well, it's about 15 years old now, but because of that research, we have to funnel it down and translate it to school staff so they can understand what the issue is and why it's important to offer training so that they understand the need. So in number 6, it could increase the potential for litigation. That's always a risk. However, I will say that when litigation is involved, schools are quick to set up concussion management teams. We've seen that. Next slide. In conclusion, schools are required by federal law to support struggling students. Do they all do that? No. Should they all? Yes. They're required to. However, they don't always do that consistently. Sometimes they need a little nudge. In Pennsylvania, we were lucky with our Department of Education and Department of Health support promoting it. We have over 3,000 teams that have trained, and that's a lot of school teams. So we don't have legislation here. Colorado doesn't have legislation for return to learn there, but our schools are seeing the need and signing up for it on their own. So although return to learn legislation can help align schools within a state into doing something to create a plan for concussion management, the biggest missing piece continues to be a lack of funding for training to then meet those requirements of the legislation. And that's what we're seeing even happen with the return to sports concussion laws. So even though, as Melissa's saying, having a law does open the door to increase things, states are still struggling to even meet the minimum training requirements for the return to play laws. So it varies greatly from state to state. And then third, to change the culture and function of a school infrastructure, it requires much more than just legislation. It requires a commitment to training because you need to change beliefs and misconceptions that people hold in order for them to do a systemic societal change, which is really what is needed. So in essence, we don't have legislation for return to learn in Pennsylvania. Colorado does not have it. If we get it, that would be awesome. However, we also need to be prepared if we don't, that our schools still have laws they have to follow to support a student who is struggling. And if we do, we need to somehow provide funding for solid training, not a quick training that there's not a lot of accountability for. Thank you.
We've got a couple of questions coming into the chat here. First for Brenda. So it says, so who pays for the training in Pennsylvania?
Our Pennsylvania Department of Education pays for the training in conjunction with Colorado's Department of Education for the training piece. And then our Department of Health pays a portion also. So it's a blended, braided funding project.
Wonderful. And then I think this other question is probably for Dave, says, what I see with our state's equivalent of Max Law is it has caused people to consider the issue taken care of, but is not implemented well. How has Oregon gotten this permeated all the way to the coach student level?
Well, I personally think it's a function of the fact that the law is well known. The law has been essentially publicized so widely. There have also been private rights of action against the schools where violations of Max's law have occurred. And by Max's law, that's the return to play laws. I know that there are cases in the state where school districts have unfortunately paid a significant civil penalty because Max's law return to play concussion protocols were not followed. That, I think, has gone a long way toward requiring enforcement and requiring implementation. As for the questioner state, I can't answer that, although I would certainly urge them to look into those private rights of action where a problem occurs. I'd like to also, address a comment that Brenda just made with regard to training, for instance. And it's my opinion that having a law opens the door for more training. It's mandated at that point. Brenda made a comment that no one likes more laws. That not necessarily something that you should tell a lawyer, because I actually do think laws have their place. I'm reminded of the Shakespeare quote, let's kill all the lawyers. And if we know the context, that's because we don't want someone enforcing the law. And it's my experience that the people who don't like more laws typically are those bad actors who don't want to comply with the law. With regard to our return to learn law that we passed in 2020 that I briefly mentioned, we did do what Brenda very rightly addressed, and that is separate our state's return to school, return to academics law from merely covering athletes. This law covers all returning students. And we did it under the guise of what I've called for years and years, an immediate temporary accommodation plan. We don't have the luxury of waiting for a 504 plan. As everybody who is in this field knows, that will take weeks, if not months, to achieve. We knew that there had to be immediate academic accommodations so that that concussed student does not fall behind and suffer lifelong, very long-term consequences for a short-term disability that was not accommodated for. We weren't seeing that happening voluntarily. And so we said, look, we have to provide an incentive, a velvet hammer, if you will. In other words, the state coming in and saying, because of this law, you will provide these immediate temporary accommodations. Now, is it perfect? No. It does not cover behavioral accommodations. It does not cover social accommodations, both of which I think need to be addressed in future laws, much like we addressed the greater youth athlete population with the passage of Jenna's law 4 years after the passage of our high school concussion law. So that would be my response, and typically my long-winded response to a relatively short question.
I just have one or two little things. So I definitely do not want people to think that 504 plans are fast or that they should. We actually do not even recommend 504 plans unless a student is substantially impacted. So, giving a student a 504 plan earlier than 4 weeks, there needs to be a need established. So Brain Steps, we really shy away from that with our districts, but through our model here, that's what we provide. Also, like Dave was saying, the immediate temporary academic adjustments. That's what our concussion management teams are trained to provide. And then we also open up the training so that everyone in the school staff, if there's a concussion team there, they can all view the online training. And it does include behavioral supports, social supports, physical, cognitive, sleep supports, parent involvement in what they can do at home. So between all of our states, we do have a lot of good supports out there that are available. It's just how we're trying to figure out how our state specific infrastructure is and where do we fit in with that. I think that was all. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to say was that a lot of teachers, I'm a special education teacher by training, and I was, I didn't want more laws as a teacher. I was one of those people. I thought, man, that we have a lot of laws we need to follow. And there are laws, but we also have, as educators, if I know that something could hurt a student's ability to learn because they have symptoms, then I would want to support the student. So training is definitely important so we can change people's understanding of what happens when a student has a concussion. And yeah, so there's no perfect solution, but our states are working together. And we are, for all severities of brain injury, but we are all working together to learn from each other on what works and what doesn't work and what could we try to do better to share with other states in the future.
Thank you. Dave, did you have anything else you wanted to add to cap off that conversation?
Well, sure. The one thing that I will add is that Brenda's absolutely right about we want to make it as easy as possible for the teachers in the classroom, because without that ease of implementation, we know that it's not going to get done. And that's why in our return to school law that we passed last year, we essentially, it's going to require the establishment or the creation of a form that will have an if-then model to it. If a student is sensitive to light, then let that student wear a hat, let that student sit in part of the classroom where the light is not as effective. If the student is fatigued, then apply certain accommodations along these lines. So while we agree that there are other things to do, we believe that getting that form in the hands of all teachers throughout the state of Oregon will lead not only to education, as Brenda rightly points out, is a huge part, but essentially will be kind of a quasi-training in and of itself. Don't get me wrong, not to be substituted for a rigorous, robust training session that certainly we at CBERT do through our own concussion outreach programs to the schools. And I know that Pennsylvania does as well, and others don't as well. But it will show those teachers that, yes, this student suffering the effects of this quote unquote invisible injury will need accommodations. And here's how you can right now in the classroom provide those accommodations.
Wonderful. Thank you both for such a spirited, interesting conversation. I think there's a lot that we'll be thinking about moving forward here. I think next I'm going to turn things back over to Julie Myers and or Jennifer Braun to move us into the facilitated conversation for the remainder of the session here.
Yeah, at this time, we just like to open it up for any and all questions from any part of any of the presentations you've seen so far today, or if there are comments or anything like that. This is just a real open discussion time. We do have some questions prepared just in case, but really this is your time to ask questions and make comments.
Julie, this is Karen McAvoy. I'm wondering if I could add a little bit to conversation to the last part about legislation, if you
Please
wouldn't mind.
do. Yeah.
Okay, great. I wanted to jump in and just add a few other things. There are about 8 to 10 states that have created some kind of return to learn legislation language with either with their return to play law or something around return to learn in their states. And what I'm finding from traveling around and talking to different states is that if you legislate return to learn as they have done in those states, you still cannot legislate what schools must do. And that's because of local control. That's because every school district gets to decide what they can do, what program they want to bring in, what they can afford, what resources they have. So even the states that have been mindful of trying to move forward with more awareness and accountability of return to learn, then get stuck with, they don't know what to bring in that's going to be able to cross all the different schools with all the different needs. So legislating awareness and need for return to learn is definitely not the debate. The debate is, once you legislate that, then the state is more obligated to put something in place. And we as a field still do not have really good answers for those schools about what to put in place. There's a question in there about, can REAP fill the training gap for this? And the answer to that would be yes, to some degree. As you know, REAP has those 4 different teams. And for the 15 states that we have worked with to get training out, we have had to create a slightly different training for each one of those teams, because what you would train an athletic trainer about return to learn is different than what you would train a medical doctor about diagnosis. And of course, as I said earlier in my segment, how you train teachers about return to learn has to be very specific to the language of the teachers. So when we create REAP for a state, we do create 4 separate trainings for each one of those teams. And they are slightly different because they have to be. Now, what we have learned with return to learn then is that we have had to create additional materials beyond REAP, because REAP, can't just be about return to learn. So we created the Get Schooled on Concussion materials. The Get Schooled on Concussion materials are, as Brenda and David were talking about, they are specific to educators. They take the science of concussion and they turn this into the language of educators so that educators feel comfortable with this. Nobody wants to be told what to do by a doctor. Nobody wants to be told what to do by another profession. Teachers want to create their own interventions and their own, they want to be in charge of how they support kids in their classroom. So we're finding that even forms are not helpful enough for that, because if a student with has light sensitivity is told then that they can wear a hat, some schools are really against hats because it creates other issues with gang affiliation, et cetera. So so when you're creating return to learn for a school, you have to allow the school to be part of their own process of figuring out what's going to work for them in their own school, or else it's not going to be sustainable and it's not going to be long lasting, because you're expecting someone from the outside to be telling them what to do. So those are the additional things I wanted to bring in. It's not that there haven't been states that haven't tried it. It's that even if you put return to learn out there, you can't tell schools what to do. And we as a field need to now backfill the school-specific, school-directed, specifically classroom teacher-generated materials. Not only that it resonates for them, but that we can deliver it to teachers as easily as we deliver that training to teachers with the Teacher Acute Concussion Tool, which is a 5-minute survey and 4 weeks worth of training that they get by email and tip sheets. So those are the barriers. Not that I don't think we debate that we need return to learn and we need accountability and we need schools doing more of it, but they don't have any money to do that. They don't have any vision to do that. And now, especially coming off of COVID, they're very stretched. So those are, I think, the other complicating factors I wanted to add before we left this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McAvoy. And I think Dr. McCart wanted to weigh in as well.
Hi, I saw another question there. I have a couple things to add. I completely concur, Dr. McAvoy, with the laws that are out there on return to school. Many of them are non-prescriptive and don't tell states or people what to do. In fact, I was on a evaluation team that did a study of the existing laws and the components, and that is one of the things that we found, is that the laws that tend to be out there are incredibly general and don't provide a lot of guidance. And so when we crafted Oregon's law, we wanted to be sure that we didn't put out a general statement that just said, hey, schools, you must do something about this, because that doesn't help. And so what we did in Oregon is provide specifics that hopefully will provide a foundation for individual schools to build their program at their school. What we know about schools is that they all have different levels of resources. And so we can't say, you will do this in your school, but we can tell them this is where you need to get to. This is the outcome. How you get to that is up to you guys. And so that was one of the specifics that we were looking for in our Oregon law. And one of the things that we thought was important is that we have these existing laws, we have 504 laws, we have IEP laws, but really what we were finding is even with our Oregon TBI teams who do a lot of the same work BrainSteps does, we'd put teams in schools and then they still wouldn't provide the accommodations for all kinds of reasons. And so we wanted to fill that gap between the time of injury and the time of being eligible for 504 services or IEP services. And that's a little bit about what happened in Oregon. And the question in the chat talks about fiscal. In Oregon, we did do a fiscal evaluation before this law went out. And what was really nice about Oregon is we already had the pre-existing TBI teams that could pick up the training that was necessary. And so the fiscal impact for Oregon specifically was almost none, because we could piggyback on the Oregon TBI teams. So I would concur that in other states that don't have that infrastructure, that there would likely be some fiscal impact to the schools. I think that was what I jotted down. So thanks for letting me chime in, everybody.
Folks can continue to put their questions in the chat if they have any. And if not, Julie, did you have any other questions you wanted to pose to the crew?
Sure. One question that we came up with concerns health equity, and this for any of the speakers. How should and how are programs addressing health inequities in the student populations with brain injury? And I know this can sometimes kind of feel like maybe an odd question on the surface of it, because students with brain injury are already a population with special needs. But we know from research and just everyday experience that there can be a lot of intersectionality of different factors which can create compounded and even greater health inequities even within this community. So if just any of the speakers have anything that could speak to that.
I'd be happy to jump in to talk a little bit about health inequity, at least on the concussion side. I think that's why so many of the panelists here today have talked about really focusing on that we cannot just take care of our athletes, that we have to take care of our non-athletes as well. The return to play legislation was wonderful to help bring awareness to the fact that our athletes were sustaining concussions, and it was very high risk for some serious catastrophic events. And over time, what ended up happening is that our athletes, because of the law, because there were athletic trainers who were really trained and coaches who were trained to watch out for them, they were being taken care of better than our non-athletes. What we have found over the years is that the students who are not athletes, who get their concussion in non-athletic ways, they're in a motor vehicle accident, they're as a result of an assault or something like that, And they don't have to go to see a doctor, and many of them don't. I think Brenda said that that's close to 50% now. If you don't have insurance, if you don't feel comfortable going to a doctor, if you go to a doctor once but you don't go back to a doctor, then all of this return to learn cannot be predicated based upon seeing a medical professional, because that will cut out a significant amount of our population who is either unable or choosing not to see a medical provider, or there are no resources in their area. And for those reasons, return to learn has to be completely school-based and run by schools, because all children get to go to school, but not all children get to go to see a doctor. And that would not be the only time that you could do a robust return to learn plan. So with concussion, just the fact that this athlete, non-athlete, and going to the doctor, while we agree everyone should, that's just not the case. That right there is a huge health inequity for concussion alone. And I'm just speaking to concussion on that point.
I have a quick comment on that. I like to say that we shouldn't let a concussion alter the trajectory of life a student has. And I think that speaks to what a lot of us are talking about, in that our laws, whether we have them or not, or our practices, whether we have them or not, cannot simply single out athletes and promote athletes and help athletes. And I think we can all agree on that. One of the things that we thought was helpful in our House Bill 4140, which is the accommodation law we have, is that it specifically pulls that apart and says all athletes, or all students, not athletes, and breaks down some of that barrier of support that our non-athletes were facing. And that's one of the reasons why in Oregon we've moved towards the credible history eligibility away from the medical statement, very much like what Colorado has done. And that what we really are looking at is, in general, how do we break down barriers to access for all students, access to temporary accommodations, access to healthcare, access to special education, access to services in general. And, there's a lot of reasons for access inequities in schools. There's a lot of rules, there's a lot of policies, there's a lot of forms, there's just a lot of stuff. And so how do we make it accessible to all kids? And that's really what our goal is.
This is Brenda again. Thanks, Melissa. That's very important information. And something that I want to kind of close everything back together with is, we've talked today a lot about students with severe injury. We've talked a lot about students with concussion, but there sure are a lot of students out there who have moderate brain injuries, who don't meet the concussion law, supports, who go to the hospital, maybe they're in a coma for a short period of time, maybe they've lost consciousness for under a day, but they're hospitalized, or even a concussion that's considered complicated, which would be a student who has a concussion and then also has a finding on a neuroradiological scan, like an MRI or a CAT scan. That could be like a brain bleed, a skull fracture. That makes the concussion what they consider to be more complicated. And the research tells us that complicated concussions kind of follow a recovery trajectory of like moderate traumatic brain injury, of the students who are hospitalized, for a period of time, discharged home, maybe outpatient therapy, maybe not. And it's those students that really go back to school looking normal. And we get those students at Brain Steps, but we are not still, after 14 years, we're still struggling to get them ASAP. We are getting them, but not until they are starting to fail in school. And there's a lot to that. You know, there's a lot. Parents want their child. They want nothing more than normalcy. Student wants to return to normal. And so it's really changing views also, and raising awareness that all severities of brain injury are so important to support. There needs to be more training at the pre-service teacher level. Oregon does a lot around that. There needs to be more at the college level so that people who are going into the field of education have some basic knowledge about brain injury. And so that's just what I wanted to say, just that, you know, the students with moderate brain injury, they're still falling through those cracks, even in our states where we have things to support them. So be thinking about them also. That's all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Egan Johnson. Looks like that's probably a good close for the conversation. We don't have any other questions coming in. So I think I will turn things back over to Tom Campbell to close us out.
Hi, everybody. Wow. I am really blown away by today's presentations. This has been a lot of information, a lot of really, really rich stuff. Before we move out of and say goodbye, please don't leave just yet. We have a few real-time evaluation questions that Connor is putting up on the screen, I hope, very shortly. There they are. And I wanted to, I'll keep talking while you are filling those things out. Please fill them out. Your feedback is really, really important in terms of making sure our future webinars are high quality and useful to the stakeholder community. And a reminder to send any suggestions if you have longer comments about the webinar today or any further follow-up questions, please send those requests and suggestions to tbitarc@hsri.org. That is our TA provider that is supporting our grantees as well as the larger stakeholder community. So please fill out the questions. I'll give you a moment. And I wanted to also remind everybody to register for the future TBI Tuesday sessions. There's 2 more remaining. Next week we have, and I'm going to call it up right now. I don't want to get it wrong. Next week we have Justice for All, Serving Individuals with Brain Injury Across the Justice System. That's on March 30th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and on April 6th, Maximizing the Effectiveness of Advisory Boards Through Full Participation, and full participation by TBI survivors. A very important component of our program is the involvement and the inclusion of TBI survivors at every level of the program. That would be on March 6th at 1 o'clock. So please, each one has a separate, each webinar, each TBI Tuesday has a separate login, a separate link. You have to register for each of them. Just because you've registered for today doesn't mean you're registered for next week. You have to register for each one in turn. We will be posting the recording of this webinar and the others and the slides on acl.gov website, and we will send out information when that happens. I'm assuming I can say that, Terry or someone correct me if I'm wrong, but we will be sending out information once the recording and the slides are posted. Right? Yes? Okay. I'll take your silence as acquiescence.
Yes, that is correct. We will send out an email to everyone that register, and you'll have a PDF copy of the presentation and a link to where you can get the recording.
Terrific. Thank you, Terry. I appreciate it. And also, I want to thank our grantee presenters. I want to thank all of our presenters today. This has been an amazing session. Julie Myers from Pennsylvania, Dave Crackey, Dr. Melissa McCart from Oregon. Really powerful. Thank you for being here. Other presenters today, Dr. Karen McAvoy, Dr. Brenda Egan Johnson, and Hillary McLean Tears. Hillary, thank you so much for your contribution today. It's really very, very powerful. Thank you for being part of this today. ACL staff people, Dana Fink, who you heard, Rebecca Ellison, Wilma Roberts are your staff people in support of this program. And of course, TBI TARC staff, Julie Detmer, Maria Crowley, who many of you know, Terry Gamacho Gonzalez, who you just heard. Thank you so much. And of course, the rock star Connor Bailey for handling all the webinar logistics so seamlessly and so smoothly. Thank you so much for that. This is all we've got today. I'm assuming, Connor, you can keep the survey up for a few minutes as people are finished with it and then going about their day. But thank you all so much, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day.